Paul Schrader is a filmmaker that despite him not making my favorite movies, like it's not like he's coming out with all of my favorite movies of whichever year they come out. He's a filmmaker that I am just forever intrigued by. I think especially in the modern age, I think he's filling in like a very, very odd but very intriguing little pocket in the film world. And it's kind of funny because I consider him, a pretty important filmmaker in my mind, but as far as his directing goes, I'm way more familiar with like his recent stuff than I am his older movies. Like of course I know his like writing from like the 70s and 80s with like Taxi Driver and stuff, but his modern films are just, Paul Schrader, it's kind of funny that he and Scorsese, they're still making movies, but they're kind of like running in two parallel lanes where Scorsese's making these huge like $200 million movies with all these, like these like totally star-studded casts. And Paul Schrader, his movies are still getting, like they still have decent budgets, they still have big stars in them. But the stories that he's telling, they feel they're super, like the conflict is a really internal one, and the stakes and the scale of his movies are like so small. And I think that they, at this point, Paul Schrader, he's kind of carved out a really interesting niche for himself. And he came out with this, like, people call it, I think it's called like the Man in a Room trilogy, that he's been working on since First Reformed, and then he did The Card Counter and Master Gardener. And it's just, to me, it's such an interesting little, moment in the film world that doesn't really get talked about very much. And I just felt like I wanted to just talk about it and maybe do a little bit of the ranking. Even though it's like only 3 movies, I just think they're all really interesting to talk about. If you don't know, these movies that Paul Schrader made, they're called Man in a Room because they're all totally disconnected, separate stories, but they all feature these like male protagonists who deliver a lot of the film is narration of like their internal monologue, and they all contain scenes of the protagonist journaling like in their room, and the narration is like their journaling, and it's at this point it's a little bit of a meme, but I think it's a cool thing to integrate into like all these movies. So with that said, I guess I'll just start talking about them. So at the bottom is going to be Master Gardener, which is the last one out of the 3. Which, it's ironic that it's at the bottom of my list because it's the only one that I own physically. Here, actually, let's grab it right here. I got it right here. May as well show it off. But yeah, Master Gardener. It's So another thing about the trilogy is that I would say they all of his movies, they all have to do with I feel like the big through line in them is redemption. Is just like coming to terms with your past, which I think is a really interesting thing for somebody like Paul Schrader to do, because his movies have always kind of been about like confronting responsibility, or not all, I can't say always, because I haven't seen everything he's ever done, but I mean, a lot of his movies just seem to be about like, you know, like finding where your place is in the world, even if you just don't really think of yourself that highly. And I mean, I'm gonna try and not spoil these movies because they all just go in directions that I never expect. Like I didn't know anything about this movie going into it. I bought it and I was like, I don't need to know anything. And it really throws me off guard. And even though it's at the bottom of my list, I still am happy to, you know, own this movie. I don't think it's a great movie. I think it's pretty. God, it's such a goofy cover, but it's like, I don't think it's great, but I think that it's really interesting, and it just goes in directions you don't expect, or I don't expect, and I don't mean that in like, oh, there's like crazy twists and stuff. I just mean like the way that the film kind of revealed this information to you is just so, I just love it. Number one thing about the Man in the Room trilogy, its tone is just Paul Schrader sets an incredible tone, and it's often very, you know, ominous and whatever. And Master Gardener does that just as well. It's just kind of, I think it's at the bottom because there's like, for example, there's parts where I question like how much Paul Schrader talks to young people, or how much he hangs out with younger people. Because like, for just as an example, there's like a younger character in this movie, and the outfits that she wears are just like so like I want to say she has a shirt that says like good vibes only, and it just like, it looks so goofy, and it's like, who, like, what young person did Paul Schrader talk to where like this is what their outfit is? And it's not like I'm like, oh, the costuming is kind of corny, that's why it's at the bottom of my list. This whole movie, I think that it's writing, it's like dialogue, it feels like insanely stilted, and it feels like not in like a good way. Like Sigourney Weaver, she's in this movie, and I just remember like hearing her talk. It's like, this does not sound like the character that she's playing wouldn't talk the way that she talks. It's just very odd. It's a very awkward. There's like a lot of scenes in it that feel very awkward. But I mean, I do think like Joel Edgerton, he gives a great performance. I think the ending is kind of, I can't tell whether it's like extremely corny or what, but it just feels like it falls kind of flat on its face. Which, I mean, I think all these movies kind of have controversial endings, and this is the one that works the least for me. So yeah, Master Gardener, what are you gonna do? Still, like, I don't love this movie, but it's a very interesting movie to me. And then next up, I got The Card Counter, which was the one that I feel, I mean, obviously it's not my favorite, it's not the top of this list, but it's one that I feel like compelled by. Like The Card Counter has this, it like seeps, you know, like you know, I mentioned earlier that this trilogy is a lot about redemption, so like maybe the characters have things about them that they're trying to move past. And I think The Card Counter does an incredible job of, like The Card Counter reeks of like an evil aura. The movie feels like really, it just feels like, you just feel like kind of gross after watching it. And it's, a lot of it, I would say, comes down to Oscar Isaac's performance. I think that Oscar Isaac in this role it's like one of my favorite things I've seen him in. And it's not like, he is just like, he looks so like on the verge of suicide the entire movie. And I feel like there's another movie where this is, out of all of these, it kind of has the most like dour just aura. But I think it does suffer from a similar thing as Master Gardener, where it's characters like, there's I can't remember her name. She was in the new Haunted Mansion movie, which is like such a random thing to pull. But Oscar Isaac's kind of partner in this movie, she is, I mean, I don't want to like disrespect her, but her performance is so, it's just not good. There's points where I was watching the movie, I've watched the movie twice, there's parts where I can't tell whether her character is supposed to be like, it feels like the character's being like sarcastic and the actor's just doing a really good job of portraying that, but it's not. It's like she's saying things that are just supposed to be delivered straight, but she's just so, her tone, like, she just feels like so out of place the entire movie. Every time that she's on screen, I don't want to say I can't stand it, but like, it really throws like a wrench into things. With that said, this movie is, it is a dark film that it's kind of funny that this movie's biggest cultural impact was like that screenshot of Willem Dafoe, and like I won't spoil it, but like, it's just a screenshot of Willem Dafoe with a very funny, it's like a very wide angle, or a very wide frame, or lens, I mean. And this just looks so goofy, but those scenes that he's in, I should say those scenes in general in the movie that look like that, they're incredible. Like, they're crazy. Like, they're really, it's like really harrowing and like really unsettling. And I think they're a really unique thing that is not in the rest of anything in this trilogy. Like, there's nothing really like it in the rest of the trilogy. So yeah, I guess, I don't know, that's all I have to say about that. Next up, surprise guest, it's going to be Oh Canada, which is Paul Schrader's newest movie, and is actually not in the Man in a Room trilogy, but it feels like a very cool epilogue to the trilogy that, you know, I guess it's kind of, at this point, you have to be like in the Paul Schrader cult to be interested in this. But Paul Schrader, you know, he's an old guy, and Oh Canada is, it's kind of playing this, it's like playing back and forth with like Richard Gere, I don't remember how to say his name, and Jacob Elordi. They're like the same character, but it's just like kind of time jumping back and forth, and it's about this guy who's like a documentary filmmaker who's kind of reflecting on his life, and everybody's telling him, I mean, I guess this is like kind of thematically, I'm kind of giving it away, but the movie's basically about how he doesn't really, you know, he is not deluded by the stories that everybody tells about him. You know, he like has all these accomplishments, but he kind of knows who he really is. And as far as like the tone goes, like, this is totally outside of the Man in a Room trilogy. It is like if you're into that tone, like that really ominous, foreboding thing, this might not be for you, because it is so much of a more it's so much more tender. It feels really, dare I say, there are moments in it that feel like heartwarming. Even though, I mean, the movie's not exactly like a happy-go-lucky story, but it feels like a very empathetic, a very honest look in the mirror that Paul Schrader's taking at, you know, I guess he I don't know if he has a Facebook page, and he's very funny on there a lot of the time. But he also, like, you know, a lot of his posts are very just very sobering, because he talks about how, like, he's gonna die soon, and, you know, this movie seems to be like a direct acknowledgement of that. And I think that with the whole redemption angle that the trilogy takes, this is just like the perfect punctuation mark on that whole thing. So I just wanted to throw it in here because even though it's not really tied in with those movies, it feels like essential Schrader viewing. So yeah, just wanted to shout that out. And I mean, I do think it's a very good movie. I just saw it like recently, but yeah. So that means that there's only one movie left. Let's see, how am I doing? All right. It's going to be First Reformed, which is definitely the most popular movie out of all the ones I've listed so far. With good reason. You know, it's probably the best looking movie in the trilogy. Ethan Hawke, it's like, it's probably my favorite performance from Ethan Hawke. And it's just everything from like the setting to the cinematography to the, you know, like the first half of the movie, I would say, is like there's no music or anything, and it's like really, the movie feels like cold. It's like taking place in the winter, and it feels like it's chilling. It's chilling. That's how I would say it. This movie, it's not perfect, but I am so on board for it. I love it. I love it so much. And I would say this has a very controversial ending as well, that I kind of understand, but I think that, so like, okay, I guess I'll give away a little bit about this movie. Without getting into it, the climate change has a lot to do with the plot of First Reformed. And a lot of people think that the movie feels preachy or whatever, but I don't really think of it as like I think the movie knows what it's doing. I think that it's, you know, the movie's not about climate change specifically. Like, it's not like the movie could have been about anything. I just think that more than being about whatever Ethan Hawke's character is interested in or what he's like driven by, I think it's more about Ethan Hawke's character himself. You know, like he cares about climate change, but what leads him to his actions in the movie don't have to do with like they could have made the movie about animal rights. They could have made the movie about, I don't know. But I think that I think the movie kind of deserves a little bit more credit, because it's more about just who, like as far as the redemption thing goes, Ethan Hawke's character in this movie, he's not necessarily like guilty of anything. I just kind of see it more as him discovering his complicity, is that a word? In something that he disagrees with. So it's more about him like living out his values and how that kind of comes to fruition. And on top of it, it just is like one of the best looking movies I've ever seen. It's has so many great performances, so many insane moments in it, where like, I think all of these movies, something they do really well is they just like drop bombs on you in really shocking ways. And First Reformed has moments where when I saw it for the first time, I like couldn't believe what I was seeing. So yeah, I don't want to give anything away, so I'm just gonna leave it at that. Anyways, if you haven't seen any of these movies, you absolutely should. Even Master Gardener, you should watch Master Gardener, just because it's like such a weird movie. And you know, if you do watch it based on my recommendation, go in knowing that it's not going to be exactly I don't know. It's just a weird movie. But anyways, I will stop talking now because I have to go anyway. So cool. Thank you for watching so much. I was thinking about this a lot the past couple of days, and I just wanted to get it off my chest. So I appreciate it. Paul Schrader, would love to like pick your brain because you seem like a very funny, cool guy. Anyways, later. Goodbye.